I have held the hands of more dying people than I can count, but when I stopped and tried to remember, I realized it was close to 300, maybe more, and that number still sits heavy in my chest because every single one of those hands belonged to someone who once believed they had more time. I am 88 years old, and I spent over 4 decades as a nurse, much of it in palliative care, sitting beside hospital beds when machines hummed softly and the world outside kept moving as if nothing sacred was happening inside those rooms. I have watched strong men cry like children. I have watched proud women whisper apologies into the quiet. I have watched families argue in hallways over inheritance while the person they were fighting about struggled to breathe. And if you think death is dramatic and cinematic and full of grand speeches, you are wrong. It is quieter than you imagine. It arrives slowly most of the time. It strips away ego first, then denial, then pretense. By the end, there is only honesty. That is what I learned sitting beside 300 dying patients. When the body is shutting down, the soul stops lying. I would pull up a chair, I would adjust a blanket, I would moisten dry lips with a sponge, and somewhere between the beeping monitors and the dim hallway lights, they would start talking. Not about money, not about promotions, not about political opinions. They talked about love, or the absence of it. They talked about who they wished they had forgiven. They talked about children they hadn't called in years. They talked about marriages that became business partnerships instead of intimacy. I remember a man named Robert, 79, former CEO, sharp mind even as his body failed him. His office wall had once been covered in awards, his son told me. But as he lay there, tubes in his arms, he didn't mention a single achievement. He gripped my wrist with surprising strength and said, I thought I was doing it for them. He meant his family. I thought if I built enough, earned enough, provided enough, they'd understand why I was never home. His voice cracked on that last word, never home. His son visited once during the final week. They spoke politely, like co-workers. When the son left, Robert turned his face toward the wall and whispered, I don't know him. That sentence has never left me. I don't know him. Imagine building a life so busy you forget to build a relationship. I saw that story over and over again. Different names, same regret. Then there was Linda, 62, ovarian cancer. She had been divorced for 20 years, fierce, independent, proud of never needing anyone. I don't regret my career, she told me. I regret keeping everyone at arm's length. She said she thought vulnerability was weakness. She thought needing someone meant losing control. But as her breaths became shallow, she said, I wish I had let someone love me without pushing them away. You think strength is independence. At the end, strength is connection. And then there were the quiet ones. The ones who didn't talk much until the very last days. An old woman named Teresa, who hadn't spoken in hours, suddenly opened her eyes and said, Did I do enough? That question is the most common one I heard. Not did I earn enough? Not did I win enough? Did I love enough? Did I show up enough? Did I matter in the ways that count? I want you to understand something carefully. I did not hear people say, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. I did not hear, I wish I'd bought a bigger house. I heard, I wish I had forgiven my sister. I heard, I wish I hadn't worked every weekend. I heard, I thought we had more time. Time, that fragile illusion. You treat it like it renews every morning without cost. But I have watched it run out. I have watched people try to bargain for just one more week, one more dinner, one more apology, one more chance to say I love you without pride in the way. There was a pattern. 300 lives narrowing down to one simple truth. What matters shrinks as death approaches. It becomes very small and very clear. A hand to hold, a voice you recognize, a memory that warms instead of burns. I remember one night shift when a patient asked me, "Margaret, what do they all say at the end?" I hesitated because I didn't want to scare her, but she insisted, so I told her gently. Most of them wish they had been braver with love. She nodded slowly and said, "That makes sense. You are afraid of being embarrassed, afraid of rejection, afraid of saying the wrong thing. But do you know what is more terrifying? Realizing you were silent when you should have spoken. I have seen that terror in people's eyes when it is too late to correct it. I have wiped tears from faces lined with regret. And I am telling you now, while your lungs are strong and your days are not numbered by machines, the thing they all said in different words was this: I wish I had chosen people over pride. That is the first truth, but there is more. Because regret does not only come from what you did not give, it also comes from what you chased blindly. And in the second part, I will tell you what 300 dying patients confessed about ambition, resentment, and the illusion of later. When you sit beside someone who knows they are leaving this world, something strange happens. They stop performing. There is no audience left to impress, no social mask to maintain, and that is when the deepest truths surface, raw and unfiltered. After 300 bedsides, I can tell you the second thing they all said, though the words were different. I wasted so much energy on things that did not matter. Energy, not just time, emotional energy. Years spent angry at a sibling over inheritance. Decades refusing to apologize because they were right. Marriages poisoned slowly by scorekeeping. I remember a woman named Helen who had not spoken to her brother in 15 years over a property dispute. 15 years of holidays passed in silence. As she lay dying, she clutched my hand and said, "It wasn't worth it." Her brother arrived 2 days later. They held hands, they cried, but you could see the weight of those lost years hanging in the room. Forgiveness delayed is connection denied. And yet you hold on to grudges like they protect you. They don't. They isolate you. I also saw the cost of constant busyness. A man named George once told me, I thought rest was laziness. He built 3 businesses, missed birthdays, missed anniversaries, missed ordinary Tuesdays that would have meant everything in the end. When his wife passed years before him, he buried himself even deeper into work because it was easier than grief. On his final night, he said, "I don't remember most of it." That is the tragedy of living distracted. You can spend decades chasing something and barely remember the chase. You think you are building a legacy, but what is a legacy if the people you love feel like strangers? Over and over, the dying spoke of presence, not success, not popularity. Presence. I wish I had been there. I heard that phrase so many times it echoes in my sleep. I wish I had been there, at the school play, at the dinner table, in the quiet conversation that could have saved a marriage. You are alive right now, but how present are you? How often are you physically in a room but mentally somewhere else? I watched families stand around hospital beds scrolling through phones because they didn't know how to sit with discomfort, and I thought, this is how it begins. Disconnection long before death. There is another truth the dying confessed, and it may unsettle you. They wished they had worried less about what others thought. A woman once told me, I dressed for them, I spoke for them, I lived for them meaning society, neighbors, co-workers. I don't even know if I liked what I was chasing. Imagine reaching the end and realizing you lived someone else's expectations. I saw that realization shatter people. It is not dramatic. It is quiet devastation. You don't get a rewind button. You get reflection. And reflection without the chance to change is heavy. That is why I am telling you this now. The 300 dying patients did not agree on politics. They did not share the same religion. They did not come from the same background. But they agreed on this: love boldly, forgive quickly, and be present while you still can. They regretted delay. They regretted pride. They regretted emotional distance. And perhaps most painfully, they regretted assuming there would always be more time. I held the hand of a young mother once, only 41, who kept whispering, "Tell them I was proud of them." Her children were too young to fully understand what was happening. She was not worried about unfinished projects. She was worried about whether her love had been felt deeply enough to last. That is what remains, not your resume, not your online reputation, your love, or your absence. You want a secret from someone who has sat at the edge of 300 endings. Life is smaller than you think. It is built from daily tenderness, from choosing to call instead of waiting, from apologizing first, from sitting down at dinner without rushing away. If you stripped your life down to its final week, what would matter? That is what they all said, in their own trembling voices. In the end, it comes down to this: I wish I had loved more openly. I cannot bring those 300 people back. But you are still here. Your story is still being written. Do not wait for a hospital room to discover what matters. Sit with that truth now. Love the people in your life while they can still hear you say it, because one day someone may be sitting beside your bed, and what you say in that moment will be shaped entirely by how you chose to live today.